And now, without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by Ephesoft and hosted by Accounting Today. I'd like to introduce your moderator, and that is Dan Hood. Dan, you have the floor.
Adam, thanks for that, and thanks to you all for joining us. I want to introduce our panel in a minute, but first there are a couple of housekeeping items we need to take care of. We're happy to be able to offer CPE for this session, but there are a few rules that you need to follow to make sure you get credit. First off, you must be in attendance for a minimum of 50 minutes. Accounting Today is not responsible for late arrivals or connections issues. And note that if you're watching the archive version of this presentation on anything other than November 5th, credit will not be awarded for that. It's only CPE credit's only available if you're watching it with us live on November 5th. That doesn't mean it's not worth watching. There's going to be a lot of great information in it. You might want to share it with friends and colleagues, clients, and so on after the fact. But if it's any other day but November 5th, it's not doesn't qualify for credit. In addition to staying for 50 minutes, there will be, as Adam mentioned, some polling questions asked throughout the session. All of those you need to answer, and you're going to remember with each one that you're going to want to click Submit after you choose your answer. So you're clicking at least twice, once to pick your answers and then once to submit them for credit. Assuming you stayed for 50 minutes and answered all the questions, within 3 business days, you should get an email from civilcert.net that will include instructions on how to download and print your CPE certificate. To make sure you get that email, you might want to add simplecert.net to your safe sender list. Again, certificates will only be sent to those who stayed for 50 minutes and answered all the polling questions. I doubt very much in these days of the coronavirus that we have any people watching in small groups, but if we do, the person who's logged in is considered the small group facilitator, and they need to respond to the polling on behalf of the group, and they need to monitor, document, and verify the active participation of everyone with them. We're going to ask the small group facilitator to email support@simplecert.net within 3 business days with a list of the names, email addresses, and company affiliations of everyone who's registered in their group to make sure we can get them all credit. Even if you're not in a small group, you might want to write down support@simplecert.net. That email address is pretty handy. It's going to be your first line of recourse if you have any issues. If, for instance, you don't get your CPE certificate, you don't get the email, you have any issues with it, that's the first place to reach, support@simplecert.net. All right, that's all our housekeeping items, and I'm happy to have that behind us and move on to introducing our panel and getting into today's session. We've got a lot to discuss, a lot of great stuff to go over. So very quickly, I want to introduce our panelists. To start with, we've got Steve Bowles. He's the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Evangelism at Ephesoft. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
We've also got Naren Goyal. He's the CFO at Ephesoft. Naren, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We've got me, and then last but definitely not least, we've got David Cieslak. He's the Chief Cloud Officer and Executive Vice President at RKL eSolutions. David, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, Steve, you're going to lead us through all this, so I'm going to hand things over to you.
Sure, thank you. So we've got a great topic today and a great panel. I'm pretty excited. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Before we get started into the content, though, real quick infomercial. If you aren't familiar with Ephesoft, we're a leader in the intelligent document processing space. Been around since about 2010 and provide document automation solutions for all different types of accounting workflows. Whether it's specific solutions like K-1 tax forms or invoices, or broad solutions like digital mailrooms, we apply best-in-class solutions to maximize productivity and provide context. All right, we got that out of the way. Quick agenda. We're going to take a journey, as the title gives you a hint on. We're going to go through a history and a journey to the past, talk a little bit about the baggage that the accounting profession has carried through the journey, talk about the present, then we'll get into some AI, take a slice of AI to get a little bit focused on results that can come from these types of solutions, and then we'll talk a little bit about the future. So let's go ahead and get started with the journey, and we'll talk a little bit about days gone by. In preparation for this panel, I went way back, and if we look at major inflection points throughout the history of accounting, from tokens in ancient Mesopotamia to tablets from the transactional journals of the Roman Empire and the double entry system that was created in the 13th century. The past 600 years, you've refined your craft, but it's really the past 3 decades that have been a technological revolution for not only accounting, but business in general. So just to put a stake in the ground and establish where we started, let's look in the rearview mirror for a quick minute. So let's talk about the rise of technology through the course of your careers. This is for the panelists. So for each of you, on your first day, first job, What technology do you vividly remember as sparkly and new? And then over the course of your career and through the ages, what technology had the biggest impact on your daily grind? David, go ahead and start.
Certain. Sparkly and new. Well, I got my start at Pricewaterhouse, and I do remember literally in the very first days working there, an audit entry instructor came and talked to the class and about this very exciting technology called the IBM PC running VisiCalc. And so he predicted it would change the profession. And so I thought that was particularly prophetic, and I appreciated that. And I think that's where I began my journey with technology and knowing that it would be something accessible to all. But really kind of over my career, I would say technology continues to be my passion. So from those original days, those original IBM PC days to current cloud computing, I've always been passionate about just leveraging the latest technology.
Great. All right.
Yeah, so for me, I think my first experience with sort of newer technology was at NCR in UK. My first job, I walked into the office and they introduced me to Lotus 123, which I think is similar to the VisiCalc that David was just talking about. And there was also an IBM PC, and I was really, really impressed with the ability to work with numbers and information. And I think the part that I remember the most is the ability to quickly do graphics representation of the data. So that was really impressive for the time. Since then, I've been involved in a lot of ERP implementations, planning tools. I remember one at a large company, Digital in Boston, and that I recall this was a SAP implementation, on-prem, of course, and that I think took 2.5 years and was over $100 million project at that time. So just, kind of those major ERP implementations were massive projects. Since then, I've been very familiar with implementing things like cloud-based applications, both CRMs like software.com as well as NetSuite and some of the smaller HR solutions as well.
Great. And Dan?
So I'm coming at it from a slightly different point of view since I'm coming into journalism. But for me, the thing that was sparkling and new when we started was spell check, and I think it sort of bears some parallels to accounting, just in the sense of people were sure that spell check was going to destroy people's ability to spell. No one was going to know how words were spelled. It was going to ruin the profession. And I feel like some people feel the same way about a lot of the technologies that are introduced in accounting. It's going to ruin our basic abilities as professionals. But obviously it didn't. The tool that's made the biggest impact over time has been the internet for us, at least as a distribution channel, as a way to reach out to our readers, as a way to get a much closer relationship with them and to be able to interact with them on a regular basis. And I think much the same thing applies to a lot of accountants. So particularly more recently, it's just the internet and the cloud have given them tremendous capabilities for developing close relationships with all the people they're working with that they didn't have before.
Sure. Great answers there. Quick factoid, typically how I like to do these panels is we'll do a panel question and then a factoid or some statistic that you can take away and think about. So I think we all realize the impact of the spreadsheet on the profession, but did you know that Steve Jobs credits the success of Apple with VisiCalc? $2,000 was a lot of money back in 1984, but folks were shelling it out just to get the spreadsheet running on it. Unfortunately, VisiCalc ignored the IBM market, and one of their leaders left to build Lotus 123, and we know how that ended.
All right. This is our first polling question. So for anyone who's keeping track, this is the first one. It should pop up in a separate window. If you're not seeing that, refresh your browser. The question we're asking in this case is, does your organization still distribute or process paper documents, say, for instance, mail or invoices or anything like that? And your choices are: many of our workflows still contain paper, you're actively pursuing the paperless office and have limited paper flows, or you're fully paperless. So go ahead and click the radio button. That's the round button to the left of the answer that works for you. Go to the right and hit submit to make sure it gets registered for credit. I'm going to leave this poll open a little bit longer than some of the later ones, just to give everyone a chance to get familiar with the platform. But again, you're going to click on the radio button to the left of the answer that works for you, then go to the right and hit submit to make sure it gets registered for credit. I should mention we're going to be asking questions throughout, but we're going to take as many of your questions as we can at the end of the session. You can put those in the Q&A panel at any point during the presentation. You don't need to wait till the end. But for now, we're asking you whether your organization still distributes or processes paper documents. Many of your workflows still contain paper. You're actively pursuing a paperless office and have limited paper flows, or you're fully paperless. Don't even recognize a sheet of paper if it was in front of you. So again, click the radio button to the left of the answer that works for you. Go to the right and hit submit. If you haven't had a chance to answer, please do so now, because I'm going to close this poll up in about 5 seconds. And I will count you down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's get a sense of how paperless the audience is today. About a third say say still have a lot of paper in their workflows. About half say they're actively pursuing the paperless office and have limited their paper workflows, and about 15% is fully paperless. So that's good to know. Gives us a sense of who's on the line with us today. With that, Steve, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, great, thanks. So let's talk about baggage. Any long journey has results in excess baggage along the way, and the technology journey in accounting is really no different. Your baggage on this journey has been a big ball and chain that we call the ERP. So the massive implementations that Narain had mentioned and heavy on-premise systems have been a burden in the past years for all types of businesses. So one of the technologies with the greatest impact over recent years has been the rise of the cloud and software as a service. As mentioned, you've been at a distinct disadvantage when it came to cloud consideration. You had that ERP ball and chain wrapped around your ankle, right? The on-premise beast and everything that was tied to it, custom code, third-party apps, sunk costs, reporting, list goes on and on. So for the panel, how much of an impact has this had on your organizations in your career? And is there a cloud-first attitude today? And are there any new cloud apps in your near future? Narain, I know we just put in NetSuite. You got some more of an answer to that question?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I think, we're relatively a smaller company, and an on-prem solution was never really an option for us. It's prohibitively expensive, takes a long time to implement. So that really would not have been a practical solution for us. So we evaluated a lot of cloud-based ERPs and finally settled on NetSuite. The main reason was NetSuite provided us sort of ongoing ability to grow as a company. So it scales with the business. Just overall, I think the big change that's happened with cloud-based applications is smaller companies like Ephesoft can now very quickly implement, solutions that were at one time only available to larger companies. I mean, as an example, we put in an HR system, and that I think within a week we had it up and running, and it was hugely helpful in onboarding people. A lot of the reporting and linking it to our ERP system as well. That would just not have been possible with on-prem solutions for someone like us.
Yeah, great. David?
Yeah, and well, when you think about the role of cloud, my actual title is Chief Cloud Officer. So my focus day in and day out is really helping our customers identify and implement really kind of the optimal cloud-based solution for their organization. And I would say that just thinking about the cloud journey, just as recently as a few years back, there was, concerns around security. There's concerns regarding, functionality. But really within the last few years, I would say we had reached the tipping point, and COVID just kicked that into high gear. So now it's absolutely off to the races. And virtually every single organization we're talking to today, they are really kind of cloud, not only cloud first, but cloud only. As I think Narain said, in thinking about whatever solution they're going to be putting in place, it really does need to be that SaaS multi-tenant cloud-based deployment on it. So that's all good news because I really think that as we think about just what it takes to maintain on-prem solutions, those days are numbered, and really everyone is looking to move away from that. They just don't see the value in that anymore.
Yeah, Dan?
Yeah, I'd agree. David, I think you made a great point about the sort of the move away from the security concerns. That was the thing that held a lot of cloud, held people back from adopting cloud systems for a long time, was these sort of unwarranted fears about whether it was secure. Now people recognize it's actually in many cases more secure than on-prem solutions. And I think people are starting to realize the way that cloud-based solutions allow you to sort of leapfrog into a future where it's much more flexible, and for smaller companies in particular, it lowers the barriers to entry for them in the sense of they don't have to have a lot of on-premise implementations, they don't have to have servers, and allows them to sort of get the sort of tools that maybe some of their larger competitors may have had. They're now available to them, much more easily implemented through the cloud. So I think that journey is well on its way.
Yeah, I'd like to add, the past 3 years, we've really seen a shift in attitudes. I think a lot of it, too, for accounting and kind of the ERP space is some of the data transfer technologies that have come out, the integration platforms that allow you to quickly move to new systems. So some great responses there. So just a visual for you for the baggage effect. This chart shows cloud migrations of applications from 2010 to 2016. You can see CRM, collaboration, analytics, workforce management, and then way down at the bottom, we've got the accounting ERP category. So the good news is today in 2020, about 64% of mid-market businesses are using cloud-based ERPs. Companies like Infor, Sage, Xero, Oracle are really leading the charge. And David, do you have any ERP stats to share? I know that your organization focuses on Sage.
Yeah, as I shared earlier, I think almost exclusively all of our existing customers, as they're looking at renewals, all of our, any new prospects we're working with, it's cloud first and cloud only. We really are not seeing, other than those situations where, just functionally the product just isn't market ready yet, we really are just seeing virtually no interest in continuing with on-prem as a fundamental approach, because we've moved past all those objections.
Okay, thank you. So the journey ends here at the present, and what a great time to arrive, right? I did this before the election, but we know all about the pandemic, civil unrest, large market fluctuations, the kind of things that create unpredictable cash flows and significant changes in operations and overall mindset. So now that we know that our notions of business and how to operate on a day-to-day basis have changed, for the panel, what's the most significant change to your business you've seen in 2020? And what technology has been your savior and the bane of your existence? David, I think you're up first.
Yeah, no, boom and bane. I'm going to go with both on this one and just say Zoom. I know for everyone on this, today's call, it feels like we spend our day in front of our machines, in front of our cameras, and I think it's both, a tremendous opportunity, but it also requires, just kind of a new mode of working. So I think it's something we've all had to, quickly get acclimated to, and and if you think about just Zoom as an overall product and platform, I mean, they scaled dramatically in just a month or two's time, and I'm always reminded of this quote recently that Satya Nadella from Microsoft had shared as a part of their developers conference, and said that we've undergone 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months' time, and it's certainly, I think, for all of us, it absolutely feels that way. But I've been fortunate enough to work with a virtual organization. Our team members are across 23 states. There's over 100 of us. So we were already kind of operating in that mode, but so maybe wasn't as negatively impactful. But clearly, just leveraging technology has been a great boom for all of us.
Noreen?
I think obviously the biggest shift has been the remote work environment. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist that way. I like to go to the office, and like to meet people. That's a huge change, and I was a little skeptical that with the current situation that we'll lose a lot of productivity. But back to the technology that we have currently, Zoom clearly being one of that, it really basically means that, frankly, we've been operating full force, and we've not missed a heartbeat. And it's really all because of all the kind of newer technologies that are out there, and that help us be productive. We did actually accelerate a few things like implementing our own tool internally, which is our semantic solution for accounts payable. That was something we've been meaning to do with the remote work environment. That's something we put in place and really helped drive efficiency in kind of the accounts payable side of the house very, very quickly.
Sure. And Dan?
So for us, it was interesting. The main thing for us is our content management systems, and they had all been cloud-based and online to start. We didn't join them because they were cloud-based. We joined them because they were the best on the market, and the best we needed, and they had all the features we wanted. But they were all cloud-based, so that when March 16th came along, all of a sudden we realized we had almost nothing to do to make sure that all our staff could work from home. They just sort of, every once in a while someone would have to turn on a VPN or just change their browser settings or whatever. But we really just transitioned very, very smoothly. So having all those systems already in the cloud and full featured was really saved us and kept us going. I would say our big promise we were discovering more and more people were sort of more in our audience was forced off their desktop computers they used at work, was discovering how very different everybody's experience is depending on their platform or the device they're viewing you through or interacting with you through. Is it a phone, a tablet, a desktop computer, a laptop, whatever the case may be, and what kind of browser you're using? And that became an issue for us as more and more people were interacting with us that way. We had to figure out how that affected what we were doing.
Sure. So just a quick factoid, this was an interesting survey by NetSuite, and it ties in with what we've seen at our customers. 63% of the respondents said one of their biggest pain points during the pandemic was dealing with mail and documentation that flowed into the office. Things like government forms, invoices, legal correspondence were very, very difficult to handle in this time frame. So continuing on the today theme and our modern age, the technological advances are just mind-numbing if you look out there. Many of them are enabled by the cloud. So those of you that are already in the cloud, you can take advantage of some of those and providing massive value to all different types of organizations. So for the panel, what do you see as the top tech trends today and what gets you really excited? We'll go to David.
Yeah, I would say that looking at this slide, thinking of the different, bullets listed here, I would say, interestingly enough, I think 4 of them are definitely interrelated or would fall under what I call the AI umbrella. So robotic process automation, predictive analytics, deep learning, machine learning, AI, all kind of interrelated, but in all of those, in fact, rely on the cloud. So the cloud is the delivery mechanism for that. And so, yeah, I really think all of this technology is going to be transformative. AI, machine learning, and as that kind of gets baked into product, starts showing up on users' desktops, through the browser, through their cloud products, it's just going to help them work smarter, better. So it's truly an exciting time, in accounting and finance.
Noreen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think a lot of the bubbles on top are interrelated, and for me, the whole AI ML part of the equation is really, really promising. The part that I think gets very exciting is not just having information or data being processed and passed into reports and stuff, but really starting to do contextual information, so effectively bringing relevant data from external or internal sources to have the decision makers make a decision. And as an example, if you're doing customer onboarding for a commercial client in a bank, the current process, historically, it can take months, especially if it's an international client, to get a customer onboarded. And a lot of it is because there's a lot of cross-references and checking that has to be done before they can be onboarded. There's KYC, know your customer requirements. And frankly, all of that, especially with the AI/ML technology, can be automated, and a lot of interesting work's getting done in that space. So going ahead, I can see something like that particular example, something that used to take months could be absolutely reduced to days or weeks very, very quickly.
Yeah. Dan?
Yeah, I'd take a step back. I think both Fran and David mentioned these. A lot of these are sort of interrelated. So I'm going to take a step back and say the big trend in technology really is technology itself and the way it's moving to the center of a lot of people's strategic thinking, whether it's a finance department or an accounting firm or anybody. They're just starting to say, technology is a central thing, and we need to embrace it as a core thing about a thing that we think about on a regular basis, and particularly as move from thinking of technology as a way to do what we to digitize what we do now, take our processes, our current way of doing things, and putting it on a computer, and switching to thinking, well, the technology allows us to do a lot more. Let's rethink what we do in terms of the capabilities of the technology, so that the technology is driving what we do, as opposed to letting our old processes drive what we do with the technology.
That's a great point. We see that a lot in the robotic process automation space, where folks jump into projects too quickly and they just reproduce a bad process digitally versus rethinking what the technology can really do for them. So it'd be interesting to see where that technology goes over the next few years as well. So I thought this was a great graphic from a 2018 Gartner report, and it shows the number of organizations currently using the technology, and then the forecasted rise of AI, blockchain, and RPA, or predictions. So notice that AI had the highest % of forecasted use in 2020. And that brings us to our next poll question. Dan?
All right. Thank you. Here we go. We're asking, what technologies do you have in place in your organization? In this case, you can choose all that apply. So do you have document management? Do you have workflow systems? Do you have RPA? Do you have AP automation? Or do you have AI? So again, click the radio button to the left, and in this case, you can pick more than one. So click the radio buttons to the left of any of these solutions or these technologies if you have them in place in your organization. Then go to the right and hit submit to make sure they get registered for credit. So again, what technologies do you have in place at your organization? Do you have document management? Do you have workflow? Do you have robotic process automation? Do you have AP automation? And do you have artificial intelligence? So again, click the radio buttons to the left of any of those technologies that you have going on. Go to the right and hit submit. I'll just remind you again, we're taking questions in the Q&A panel. We've already got some in there, but we'll take as many as we can at the end of the hour. So put those in whenever you like. But in the meantime, we're asking you a question. If you're not seeing this question, you might refresh your browser. That will usually pop it up to the front, so where you can see it and answer it. Because you do need to answer all the polling questions to qualify for credit. And if you're keeping track, this is our second polling question. If you haven't had a chance to answer, please do so now, because I'm going to close this poll up. We're asking what technologies you have in place at your organization: document management, workflow, RPA, AP automation, artificial intelligence. So again, select the answers that work for you, hit submit, get them registered, because we're going to close this poll up at about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's see what technologies people have. Big numbers, but almost 80% have document management, about 2/3 have workflow, about 1/3 have AP automation, and then RPA and artificial intelligence down around 10%. Given the time frames in which all those technologies have sort of rolled out, that makes sense if you just think of it in terms of the ones that have been around the longest have the most adoption. But it's interesting to know, gives us a sense again of who's on with us. Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, interesting result from that poll. Well, here we are in 2020, and that 2018 prediction really seems like a long time ago. So as we get into AI, I'm going to go what I call full moto, master the obvious, and do a level set here. This is dictionary.com's definition of AI, the capability of a machine to imitate human behavior. But imitate is all subjective, right? That could be basic data entry off an invoice. It could be automatically assigning a GL code, right, based on interpretation. or we could go full throttle and make strategic decisions based on business and drive business direction based on analysis of broad data. So as we go through here, think about what this means to you and what it would mean in your organization. So as we get into the core of our discussion, let's start with the question. In the accounting profession, there's a ton of misinformation out there on AI and what it can accomplish today and where it's best utilized. So for the panel, where do you see it talked about the most? What are your initial impressions? And do you think it's fact or fiction? Noreen, let you start.
I think it's definitely real, but it's very early stage is my feeling on this. But I also see this evolving really fast. A lot of the manual tasks that are currently done, I think so the simpler version of AI can solve them very quickly. And we're starting to see a lot of products and services that are around that currently. But I think it's going to very quickly evolve into a lot more of the predictive analytics part of it. I kind of referenced the contextual piece earlier as well. And that's really bringing a lot of external and internal information together to really allow framework for decision making. And that's going to be the exciting part of AI.
Great. David?
Yeah, no, I think Noreen had some good examples. Predictive analytics, I think, is really what a lot of folks are very much looking forward to. But I think what we're witnessing in the marketplace is really just kind of this incremental arrival of this technology. And so publisher by publisher, they're saying, what are the opportunities to incorporate AI into our solution? And so it might be image recognition or basically anomaly detection, looking for things that might be coded in ways that are different than the past, and definitely the predictive piece we were just talking about. So really, I think publisher by publisher, product by product, they're looking for opportunities to smarten up their application, bring AI into the mix. And I'll keep coming back to, when we're working with a cloud-based solution, the publishers have that opportunity to keep introducing this new, more powerful functionality into the solution set. So it's going to get exciting here very, very quickly.
Dan?
Yeah, I take a slightly different tack and talk about the way in which we hear it talked about most here at accounting today is that we hear it talked about, it's going to take jobs away from accounting. It's going to take jobs away in offices where, because it'll handle the processing of all kinds of things internally. And our sort of take on that is it's not going to take away jobs, but rather it's going to take away tasks. For in many cases, it's going to remove the sort of basic tasks that can be applied to where AI can be applied, and it's going to free up a lot of people to pursue the sort of predictive angle of things, to sort of add value in their function, whatever their function may be, by moving away from having to do just the basic work of compliance and of coding and of processing and all that sort of stuff that basic AI can do, and be freed up to look at the results they get from the predictive analytics and interpret those and bring the sort of human intelligence to them that no matter how good AI gets, it's never going to be able to deliver.
Yeah, I like to say it's going to let us do the fun stuff, right? Get rid of those rote tasks. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So here are some compiled myths of artificial intelligence. So today, machines rely on humans to train their models. So they still have humans inputting, and that's absolutely required for success as they build out the way that they function. So it can go beyond the basic menial task automation and can be trained in complex processing. One thing's for sure, though, it's here, it's available, and every business can leverage it for speed of operations, competitive advantages, and really freeing up resources from those mundane, repetitive tasks that Dan just mentioned. That brings us to our third poll question. Dan?
It does indeed. Here we go. What is your organization's location on the AI journey? You're in the planning stages. You have a project or pilot in flight. You have AI solutions actively in place, or you're not planning to implement AI at all, or certainly or not at the moment. So again, click the radio button to the left of the answer that works for you, then go to the right, hit submit, make sure it gets registered for credit. If you're not seeing it, I know sometimes every once in a while people don't get the polling question right away. Try refreshing your browser. That should pop it up to the front, and you'll see this question, which again is, what is your organization's location on the AI journey? Are you in the planning stages? Do you have a product or a pilot in flight? Do you have an AI solution or solutions actively in place? Or are you not planning to implement AI at the moment or at all? Again, click the radio button to the left, go to the right and hit submit to make sure it gets registered for credit. If you haven't had a chance to do this, or if you haven't seen it, again, refreshing your browser will usually pop it up to the front, but we're going to close this poll up in just a few seconds. So if you haven't had a chance to answer, to tell us where you are on your AI journey, please do so now. Click the radio button to the left of the answer and then go to the right and hit submit. We'll close this up in about 5 seconds. I'll count you down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's see where everyone is in terms of their AI journey. A lot, about 2/5 in the planning stages, and then another 2/5 not planning to implement AI. Now, in some cases, I guess it's worth pointing out that, as David, I think, mentioned, a lot of the vendors, software vendors, will be implementing AI sort of for them. It'll get baked into a lot of solutions that people use, but those are interesting. Sort of two wide polls are in the planning stages or not implementing AI at all. Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, sir. So the accounting space is broad and extensive, and there's AI solutions for just about every facet of your job. We could look at tax, expense management, or any number of broad areas, but for the purposes of this panel, we'll narrow it down to a single use case or slice of the accounting pie. This probably looks familiar to you. So even if we narrow it down to source to pay and further procure to pay, we still have too broad a category. So let's take a really small bit of the process and talk about invoice receipt and processing. It's an area of great pain to just about any organization and a familiar process to just about everybody. So we could substitute any document-centric workflow, but once again, we'll pick one thing to focus on and chat a little bit about it. McKinsey did a deep study on the source-to-pay process and points out that invoice-to-pay area has really high potential for complete and total automation. But AP is the poster child for AI. In 2020, as shown by these statistics, we still have manual processing, hand-keying of data, and high time spent on exceptions processing. So for the panel, why do you think this is the case? Any experience in implementing this automation or any stories that you can tell? David?
Yeah, actually, our organization has a lot of experience doing AP automation solutions, and we really kind of think of this as the low-hanging fruit. And oftentimes when we talk about process automation, when we ask our clients to rank, kind of where is the experiencing the least efficiency or the most pain, AP process automation is almost always at the top of that list. And so if you think about it, we have an opportunity to improve accuracy, reduce the amount of time required, the amount of touch. So really, for many organizations, I'll call this the gateway to process automation. The gateway to really AI is through AP process automation. So very, very kind of a productive and cost-effective place to start.
Noreen?
I think the low adoption is primarily because of lack of awareness. I think a lot of people, a lot of companies still don't really know or understand that there's a lot of really newer, interesting solutions that are out there. I think there's been some legacy solutions in this area, but generally speaking, those were heavy lift in terms of long implementation times. They were, traditionally on-prem, and just required a lot of investment up front to get them up and running. I think the newer low-code, no-code, AI-based technologies, and semantic, in our case, is a good example, which is up and running in hours, and it really changes the game for organizations. We I think mentioned earlier, we internally adopted semantic, and it was really a seamless process and immediately impactful for the business. So there's solutions are emerging, but the awareness isn't quite there yet.
Okay, and Dan?
Yeah, I'd agree with Darren about awareness is a problem, but I think also complacency. Everyone has a process here in place, and they say, well, it works, I guess. They don't, and they look at the possibility of implementation and think, ooh, that'll be a big problem. That'll be a lot of work. It isn't necessarily, in the gains, as we discussed, are huge, but the complacency and then the fear of implementation, I think, keep a lot of people from changing. I would also say that some people are also going to be concerned about the sort of the levels of technology comfort or tech savviness among their team, or among any of the people who maybe need to be touched by this kind of system. They'd be concerned about that, and what does it mean in terms of training them and so on. So I think most of the problems with it are misconceptions or misunderstandings, but that doesn't mean that they're not felt the same way.
Yeah, ease of use is definitely one of the biggest areas of concern for most of our prospects and customers. So I think we can all admit that AI is finally hitting the mainstream, whether it's a specific project or within one of your software platforms. Organizations are seeing broad benefits of really laser-focused solutions to solve specific problems. So this chart from Deloitte sums it up. Making complex processes more efficient really leads the pack when it comes to objectives for these AI projects and their true outcomes. Accounting processes are ripe for improvement, and putting the invoice flow on autopilot can be key to freeing up staff and really reaching max efficiency. Well, AI is all about results. So if we focus on the AP invoice slice of the pie, let's get some feedback from the panel. So with an automation project, let's stick with AP, obviously. What's a reasonable promise of time savings that doesn't raise an eyebrow? David, what do you say?
I was all good until you said doesn't raise an eyebrow, because I think the opportunity here is just absolutely tremendous. And we've seen just a number of studies done on this where they're saying it could be 14 plus days down to 3 days. And that is, eye-popping. And that, along with an 80% cost reduction, which kind of gets back to what I said earlier. This is why so often organizations say this is the logical place to start, is just the dramatic savings and just the dramatic turnaround in time for processing.
Sure. Dan?
Yeah, I think you see a huge variation in terms of what people claim, if it's going to save you 2 minutes per invoice or 10 minutes per invoice or cut your time by 50%. I think the main premise is that the potential for savings is enormous. And the real question is, how much time is it going to save you will depend on how terrible your current system is. And for a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, their current system is so terrible that they may see savings well beyond even what a vendor may be promising, just because their current workflow is so awful that any kind of automation, any kind of improvement will be a big bonus.
This is true. Narain, as a CFO, what do you think is a reasonable return from a headcount or savings perspective?
I think there's sort of two components to this. One is the absolute saving itself, and typically, especially with this type of technology, I would look for a 50+% return. And I think some of the technologies can provide, greater than 50% return. But almost more importantly is how quickly can this be implemented. One of the biggest issue, again, just having worked on these things in the past, is when you put in a project that's going to take 6 months, 9 months, or 3 months, right, and you have limited resources, cash strapped or whatever, if the ability is there, especially again with the cloud-based, this low-code, no-code type technologies, getting it up and running, and if it's quicker and you can get this in place in weeks or days or hours, that to me is a huge decision factor in addition to the absolute savings you get out of it as well. Because if it is a 3-month project or a 6-month project, it just the dynamics change in terms of decision points for that.
That makes sense. So if we look at the results out in the wild, it amazes me that in 2020 organizations are still struggling with either no solution or legacy technology, right? The whole goal is touchless processing, right? Receive those invoices, process, even approve without any end user intervention. So almost 90% of organizations out there aren't close to that touchless processing kind of goal. So as a point of reference, just to give you some accuracy on the use case that we're discussing for AI, these are reference points for you around your current solutions and maybe future enhancements or solutions you may look to purchase. So you can see that current technology can provide pretty amazing results, right? Getting data extraction rates above 95%. Understand that what Naren had mentioned, those long project cycles, today with these AI solutions, you flip a switch and you're up in days versus months, or in some cases even years. So that brings us to our next poll.
All right.
Dan?
This one's pretty simple. Does your organization have an AP automation solution in place? Yes or no? Pretty straightforward. Hit the radio button to the left of the answer that works for you. Go to the right and hit submit. If you're not seeing this, refresh your browser. That usually pops right up to the front so you can get an answer. Remember, you need to answer all the polling questions to qualify for CPE. So we're asking you here, does your organization have an AP automation solution in place? And we're getting close to the top of the hour. We are going to take some questions at the end. You can put those in the Q&A panel at any point, and we'll try to go to as many as we can before the top of the hour. But here we go. We're asking you whether your organization has an AP automation solution in place. Yes or no? I'm going to close this poll up in about 5 seconds. So if you haven't answered, please do so now. Click the radio button. Click submit to make sure it gets registered. And we'll count you down with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll see just about 2/3, about a third have an AP automation solution in place, and about 2/3 don't. So that's interesting. They should be there. Hopefully, after listening today, they'll start thinking about it. Steve?
Thanks. So back, so the question a lot of folks ask is, where do you get started? For the panel, any best practices on where to get started and best practices that you've seen for project success, Noreen?
I think a couple of things. One is, whenever there's a change or bringing in new technology, what's really important is not to try and just replicate your existing process. So that's an opportunity to revisit and bring in the best-in-class process in addition to bringing the technology. Far too many times I've seen where, basically people replicate a bad process and are not satisfied with the eventual answer. The other part of this is really focusing on, and defining what are the biggest deliverables you want to get out of the project versus trying to boil the ocean. So that's another thing I've seen is where people try and get to the most, least impactful but time-consuming elements of a project, and it just, again, then drags into weeks and months versus something that could be up and running, and over a period of time you can refine it as it goes along.
Sure. David?
Yeah, and I'd say we typically start with 3 questions. What are your greatest challenges? How's that impacting the business? And what does an ideal solution look like? And that really kind of helps, at the very outset, kind of bring some focus to where an organization might want to put their energy. And from there, then look at the different products in the marketplace, look at those that appear to have, a good track record, as well as AI baked into their roadmap. And that, I think, will help guide your hand in the evaluation process.
And Dan?
Yeah, I would reiterate Noreen's point about don't be tied to your current processes. Don't be tied to what you're doing now. Look to be able to leverage technology, and if that means changing what you're doing, do so. The other thing is to be aware that it may involve some scrubbing of your data. One of the things they talk about with AI frequently is that companies and organizations discover that their data pile that they're working with isn't as clean, isn't as organized, isn't as structured as it really should be to really get the most value out of any kind of AI.
Right. So here's my 2 cents, kind of on a final note on the AI piece and what I see in prospects and a lot of our customers. In those that have legacy solutions, you can always apply the 80-20 rule, especially to accounts payable. Every piece of software can do easy, right? The low-hanging fruit. There's value in that, and if a machine can do it, it should. But the top-tier value in any process automation is that 20% that takes up 80% of your staff time, right? So here's, with that said, Here's a quick 4 rules for project success. Find those that can help with the hard angle of all your problems. Pick a known pain point that's small and manageable. Choose a high visibility, high impact issue that can provide immense value. And always, always insist on a trial or some type of live demonstration. The proof's in the pudding, right? There's a lot of misinterpretation on AI and what results should be expected. So really quick for the panel, as we're coming up on time, I want to leave some time for questions. What's next? What are you looking forward to? What's in the future for some of these technical solutions? Narain?
I can start, yeah. So, yeah, I think for me, the intelligence part of AI really starting to make an impact, and I absolutely see the value that would bring. I mentioned the contextual components and really help drive decision making, just not provide simply the information. And I think that's going to be the biggest change going forward.
All right, David?
Yeah, and I would say after AI and machine learning, I think 5G is going to be completely transformative. Some amazing use cases coming, there at the device level. It's going to really change, what we do, how we do it, given the devices in hand, as it were. And then, from an accounting perspective, I would say wider scale adoption of blockchain and really integration of those ledgers into the various, internal or cloud-based ERP solutions is going to be pretty transformative as well.
And Dan?
I would say the interesting thing for me is the human side of people getting used to, getting comfortable with the notion of technologies enabling you to be much more of an advisor, much more of a thinker, much more of a strategist, as opposed to processing and compliance and moving paper along, that sort of thing. Being able to say, listen, I'm going to let the technology enable me to be a much more valuable player and a much more proactive thinker, as opposed to just moving things through a system.
That's great. The people side of the solution, right?
Yeah.
So for Ephesoft, we've heard mentioned several times today context. Imagine having links to all the pertinent information about a particular document or piece of data. So you open up an invoice, you know whether it's fraudulent. You know the true source of the invoice. If you've got know your customer or compliance requirements, you can see all of that in what we call a digital crime map, right? Just like the crime map that puts strings and connections and builds relationships, the technology is going to do that for you and create that contextual layer for you. That's what's coming next, at least in our world. So if you'd like to get started down the road, we're just about done and getting ready for questions. If you want to go down the road of AI, you want to enhance an existing legacy process, you can head over to Ephesoft and get some information. Don't take our word for it. You can test it yourself. You can go to our site today or scan the QR code to sign up for a free trial and almost immediately begin sending invoices to our semantic platform today. So if you have any other questions, if we don't get to your question today or you want a deeper review or discussion, you can go to ephesoft.com and contact us as well. And here's that link for that free trial. You can try it out yourself today. And I'll leave you with a quote. Elon Musk is always good for a good one, right? And with that said, I will pass it to Dan, and we'll do some questions.
All right, great. Just let everybody know we started a minute or two afterwards to make sure, after the hour, to make sure everyone got registered for credit. We'll go a minute or two extra beyond the end of the hour to try to get some more questions in. So here we go. The first one, and this is a really interesting one. Someone's asking, when you're putting in digital transformation projects, do you suggest these should be implemented in bite sizes, piece by piece, or in one big bang?
Yeah, I can try that one first. I think you need to do the bite-sized projects to get momentum and get buy-in. especially from senior management. And it's kind of that snowball theory, right? You start with the small ball, and by the end of the hill, you got a nice big one that you can leverage. So that's my 2 cents.
That makes sense. David or Noreen, I don't know if you want to weigh in on these.
Yeah.
I was going to say the only other thing
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. The only other thing I would add to that is, I'm still a big fan of doing the, kind of the clean white sheet of paper exercise. Imagine, and I think Noreen said it several times during when he was sharing his thoughts, we don't want to just automate bad process. Make sure to envision what, an ideal solution looks like, and make sure that we're, headed toward that target. We're not just trying to automate something that today is painful, and now we're just doing it, paying more quickly. So just make sure to factor that into the thinking.
Okay. Noreen?
I think basically the 2 points together, which is have a clarity of vision, what you're trying to achieve, but then take it in bite-sized pieces and kind of show success and build on it, but have some clarity on what you're trying to achieve eventually.
Perfectly put.
Excellent. All right. Next question. Someone's asking, do you think AI can really bring value to all organizations, especially if they're SMEs, small and mid-sized enterprises, given the high investment cost involved relative to the small revenue of some of these entities? And Steve, I don't know if you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing over the past couple years that the cloud has really brought down the cost of AI solutions. In fact, most of the vendors, the accounting vendors, are now incorporating it into all different types of systems. So it's definitely within reach now for just about any type of business, especially for point solutions.
Gotcha.
I think that's the beauty of the newer technology, right? The low-code, no-code, quick implementation. That's what's changed from something that was only available to the large organizations to like I said, we are relatively a smaller organization, and we were able to get it up and running and get results very quickly. So
it'll
definitely lower the barrier. Yeah, lower the barriers of entry and made these what used to be large organization sort of perks are now available to much smaller firms and companies. Next up, someone's asking about how can accounting firms who use AI to help their clients better understand, how can accounting firms who use AI help their clients better understand the benefits, capabilities, and opportunities of the technology? And David, I think it might be a natural place to start with you on this question, how firms can help their clients better understand the benefits of the technology.
Well, and I think as we've all been talking, it's going to show up in processes. And if we're able to really kind of have that kind of master vision, as Noreen said, but break it down into bite-sized pieces, it's that's where the education starts. And I think once you kind of get the ball rolling, most of the clients are going to pretty immediately see the uptake and the potential for real improvements in efficiency and accuracy.
Quick note on that, Dan. There's an interesting phenomena that we've seen in that the big X audit, tax, and consultancies, they're all bringing these solutions in-house to understand them, deploy them, learn them, and then service their clients or provide those solutions to their clients. So they're actually drinking their own champagne, I'll say.
Excellent. All right, we're past the hour, but I think we have time for one more quick question. And in this case, someone's asking how much setup is required to recognize invoices in these applications. I don't know who wants to take the first stab at that.
I can take it. With our semantic platform, there's almost no setup. So you connect it to your backend ERP. The model that recognizes the invoice data has been built with hundreds of thousands of invoices. So you just start processing and start validating your data. So
fantastic. All right, like I said, we're a little bit over the hour, but that's all right. We started a little bit over the hour, but we have run out of time. I want to thank Ephesoft for sponsoring today's session. I want to thank all of our speakers. Steve, thank you very much for joining us and for leading us through this journey. It was great stuff.
Thanks. I appreciate your help, Dan.
Thanks. Noreen, I want to thank you for your insights.
Thank you. No, this was great.
And Mr. Cieslak, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
And thank you all in the audience for attending today. We hope to see you at a future webinar. Have a great day.